That's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity.
Hello and welcome to episode 65 of PvA Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Luke Croft. Joining me as always, freelance gaming journalist Cody Mellokline. Cody, how's it going, my friend?
I'm doing very all right.
Very all right. Long time no talk, man. I feel like it's been forever.
It always feels, even when we just miss a week, it feels like so long.
Yeah, it's just because, I don't play anything other than League of Legends and Teamfight Tactics anymore, so there's no opportunity to
We got to correct that.
So, also joining us, it's his favorite time of the year because we have successfully abolished the sun. Ladies and gentlemen, Larry Hunt.
I'm back in the nighttime where I thrive.
Do you legit like this?
I really do. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's so bad. What are your thoughts on this time of year, Cody?
It's sort of dispiriting. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I think I have a little seasonal affective during this time. Like I get down in the dumps and
I just don't spend a lot of time outside when it's sunny. I burn. I am a vampire, and so this gives me more time where I feel comfortable outside.
We'll see if I'm with you. With the summertime, it's hot as fuck. I don't want to be out there. But I also, now the weather is perfect. I'd love to just be able to sit on my porch at the end of the day, drink a beer, and watch the cars drive by. What? I live in a neighborhood. It's all there is to see.
I grieve the loss of your jam-packed evening.
Hey man, look, we all have our own ways of relaxing, okay? And I so choose that. My life is not, I've never claimed to have an exciting life. It's
true. I think your bathtub shenanigans are probably more enjoyable.
Gosh, did that when I got home today. I'm actually starting to feel a little sick, so there is that. Yeah. Just throwing up everywhere. You're welcome, audio listeners. This is PvA Radio. We get together each and every week over here on twitch.tv/PvA Radio at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Each of us brings one of the biggest gaming news stories of the week to the table. Then we have an in-depth discussion about it. Consider your collaborative audio feature article. And Cody, what do we want people to do with that?
We want them to spam that emote in the chat and just also paint on your garage door using finger paint. This would be a nice fall-time activity.
Yes. If you can't catch the shenanigans live, you can watch it on youtube.com/PvA Radio, where we break it out topic by topic, or you can watch it in its entirety, or listen on it on podcast services everywhere, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, and one of these days, Conan O'Brien's going to call us up, and he's going to say, "You motherfuckers want to be on the most revolutionary podcast in podcast history over here exclusively on Luminary?" And we'll say, "Yes, Conan. Revolutionize what it means to be human while you're at it. Thank you." So, we're also on Luminary. All right, guys, let's get the podcast kicked off with what have you been playing? Larry, let's start with you. What have you been playing?
Well, I know it's going to shock you, but purely Apex.
There is nothing but Apex.
There is nothing but Apex. My family is like, "Where have you been?" And I tell them I've only been in Apex. Our friend Seth has gotten about as into Apex as I have. And so it's just been a bad combination because now that I have someone that wants to play it as much as I do, I'm on all the time. The event's over, but I am still just loving the game. Nice. I may just become an Apex streamer. May quit this show, and 24/7 I'm streaming Apex.
He wakes up, he's like, "Honey, where's the R301? Get me my R301."
And
Cody.
She's digging through all my bags of coffee, like, which one is that?
Cody, what have you been playing?
Yeah, so I wasn't here last week, so I didn't get to talk about the Outer Worlds, but that's pretty much exclusively what I've been playing. It's not by any means a revolutionary game.
So it's not the Conan O'Brien of video games, is what you're saying.
No, it is not. I wouldn't call it the Conan O'Brien of video games.
Okay.
But would you call it the Conan O'Brien of Fallout games?
I don't even know if I'd call it that, but I would say it's a very fine video game that is like filling a very specific need that I had, which is like a specific style of choice-driven RPG. I had been playing Mass Effect. I bought for $20 Mass Effect 2 on backward compatibility on my Xbox One because that's a thing you can do, and so it's fantastic. Just to kind of satiate that need, and that was the week before Outer Worlds came out. I've really been digging Outer Worlds. I mean, it's got all the comparisons to Fallout are 100% there and 100% warranted. If that is the kind of game you've been missing since Bethesda decided to go down the live service rabbit hole, I would definitely suggest checking out Outer Worlds. It's got the kind of quirky writing. I mean, the team behind it made New Vegas and made the original Fallout. So it's not exactly the lines are there, but the writing is just as quirky as those games. The anti-capitalist and anti-corporate message is great. I'm on board with that. It's not subtle. It doesn't need to be subtle. It plays with it, like jacks that up to like 11, which is hilarious. Like what would happen if capitalism just went completely rampant and like every aspect of your life was governed by it? These are big ifs. I don't know if you know this. This is not how our world currently works.
Excellent.
But the characters are great. It has the kind of squad like companion system that New Vegas had, or not New Vegas, that Fallout 4 had, and it sort of similar to Mass Effect 2 as well, and Mass Effect 3. I'm just really enjoying it. Like the game bends to how you want to play it, which is the biggest part of it and the biggest aspect of it that I'm really enjoying. I made two characters. I made one character that is totally speech driven, all about persuasion, charm, hacking, and lockpicking and stealth, not about combat whatsoever. And I've been playing the game that way, and I have so many bullets because I haven't really shot anyone. And the game allows me to do that. And then the other character I made, at the beginning of the game, you can adjust like your base stats, like intelligence, charm, strength. I reduced intelligence to the lowest possible value, and then
going for a realistic playthrough.
Yes, and then I beefed up charm to max. So I'm like a total dumbass who just kind of gets through life on charm alone. And there are options in the game.
That's more of a Luke Croft playthrough.
Exactly. The game adapts to the point where like I'll have dialogue options pop up, and in parentheses before the option it just says dumb, and so it's the dumb dialogue option, and it just leads down some hilarious rabbit holes and dialogue exchanges. So the game is really flexible, and because the scale is somewhat tighter than a Bethesda game, they can allow for like a lot of different possibilities. You can kill everyone, you can kill no one. It's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it.
Roy Speedrun in the chat says, I'm about 10 hours into Outer Worlds. I think it's a fantastic game overall, one of the best I've played in a while, but it kind of just makes me want to play Fallout. And that's been the funny thing about watching kind of the roll up to Outer Worlds is they're not bashful about it at all.
No.
Like, and it's not just in the design of the game itself. It's in the advertising for the game, all of the little like you know how Fallout has the Pip-Boy videos that are really like kind of 1950s inspired, and they're doing the same exact thing with their marketing. It's kind of like, and Roy Speedrunner will probably know a great example of this because I can't think of one off the top of my head. It's kind of like a band who was wildly popular who decided to change their sound, and one of the members of the band was like, fuck you, I'm just going to go and make the greatest hits over and over and over again, and people are going to eat it up. That's what Outer Worlds seems like to me. Like, Fallout went this direction with Fallout 76, where while they try to have some subtext in all Fallout games that is like a commentary on how the world works, but they're also like, here's $100 a year subscription. That doesn't make any sense.
And here, just drop nukes everywhere.
Yeah,
because it's
exactly.
fun.
Yeah.
That meme that Circle Hunter, he changed his name, Spooky Haunter, some such in our Discord he dropped, where the guy said, I think it was a real complaint on a bulletin board. The guy said, I'm having a problem with my Outer Worlds copy. It's not requiring a $100 payment for single player campaign.
But that's just kind of how it comes across to me. Like the guy who, it's just soul food. Like, we know people want this. The people that used to make it don't make it anymore. And I know these were the people that used to make it.
Yeah.
But
I think that is totally right. But I think they've made some smart additions and kind of changes to the standard formula. Like, that's why I say I knew what I was getting into with the game, and that's fine. Like, there's room for that, and there's room for whatever the hell Death Stranding is, and there's room for whatever Apex is. Like, I know what I wanted going into Outer Worlds, and it gives that to me in a really high quality way. Like, I do think the pickup and like inventory system is kind of messy, but also, like, unlike a Bethesda game, you can't just pick up random shit and pick up everything. So your inventory doesn't stack up as much that way. They've kind of streamlined what you can and can't pick up. The gunplay actually feels, I think, better than in Fallout. Although I don't use it very often, so take that with a grain of salt.
so you would call it somewhat acceptable.
All of the
somewhat except, yes, very all right.
all the things I've said in this conversation may imply otherwise, but I'm actually quite a bit of a Fallout fan. Before I crap on them one more time and say the gunplay being better is a pretty low bar to clear.
Yeah. Yep. But it's the kind of thing where I'm not like totally relying on their version of VATS, which is like slowing time dilation, slowing down time to get through gunfights. I don't know. Like, it's definitely comfort food. But there's nothing wrong with that in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Nah. Yeah. And then you mentioned Death Stranding earlier. I do want to mention we are not going to be talking Death Stranding this week because we haven't played it. But I know there's been a lot swirling with the embargo having come up, a lot of reviews. I'm going to be playing it over the weekend. Cody, I'm sure you're going to be playing it over the weekend. And I'm sure Larry will be watching some gameplay.
I can't get it to load on my Xbox. If you could offer some support.
So just know that next week's episode is probably going to be titled, Seriously, what the hell is Death Stranding?
I think that will have to be the majority of our conversation next week.
So just a little caveat here at the top. It will not be a part of this episode. I've been playing Teamfight Tactics, man. That has been my life. And it's one of those games I have watched a couple times and been like, why the hell do people like this? This doesn't seem fun. You're just putting things on a board. They're fighting each other. You don't have any control. But then we rated, last week we rated Pearl Aries, who he's an awesome, he does like crazy Dark Soul runs. A lot of times he'll like no death runs, stuff like that. He was among one of the first people to do a no damage run on Sekiro. But we rated him while he was playing Teamfight Tactics, and I was like, all right, well, while I have this pulled up, I'm gonna just pop into the League client, try out Teamfight Tactics. I stayed up till nearly 3 a.m. playing that goddamn game. I don't know what it is about it, but it's one of those, like, to me, it has the same effect that I'm sure a lot of people have with with battle royales, where you're dropping into the game, you have absolutely nothing, and you may luck out and get a really, really awesome loadout, but then you finish in second and you're like, damn it, all right, if we go just one more time, I can probably get the win. That's what Teamfight Tactics is. Like, it's a lot of RNG, it's a lot of just kind of feeling lucky, but every game you start from scratch, and by the end of it, you're like, okay, I can do it better next time. And it took me a while to learn kind of how the game works and how to, and I'm still learning like about all the items and all that kind of stuff. But it was surprisingly deep experience, and I'm having a blast with it. It's also just real chill. Like I can turn a podcast on and play it, and it's not like I don't get tilted like I do when I'm playing League or Overwatch or something like that yet, till I get good, and then I will get tilted. But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I'm trying to talk my friends into playing it too, because it'll run on literally anything.
Where are you going to find friends?
That's the whole point of this podcast. I'm hoping Conan O'Brien will find us.
Do you know
Does
the
it
name
run
of
on a
Conan
smart
O'Brien's
bridge?
podcast?
No, I do not.
Isn't it Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend?
Yeah, that is.
Well, hit a brother up, Conan. You play Teamfight Tactics? Add my riot tag. I don't know if that's what it's called. I'm new to League. Is it called a riot tag? We'll call it a riot tag.
The wrong people to ask.
All right.
At my Nintendo ID.
Add my Nintendo ID XVX948-48562Z. Seriously, Nintendo friend tags are the fucking worst. The worst. Conan playing The Watcher, says Roy Speedrun. I don't know what that means.
I think maybe he meant The Witcher.
Check yourself, Roy Speedrun. All right.
The voyeurism simulator.
Ugh.
I don't feel good about that. All right, let's move on.
Takes a certain type.
Oh, here we go. He did a bit where he played The Witcher but called it Watcher. Jeez. All right. We're the boomers now. Great.
Okay.
Actually, no. You watch Conan. You're the boomer. Moving on. Larry, I believe you have a follow-up for us today. Did you put this in here?
Indeed, I did. I just wanted to give a quick update on Blizzard since we've talked so much about them. And to be clear, we're updating their suspension of Blitzchung for speaking out after winning the Hearthstone tournament in support of Hong Kong. And as you may be aware, this past week there was a little event called BlizzCon. It's kind of a big deal for Blizzard. There were protesters at BlizzCon, still upset about the Hong Kong situation and Blizzard's failure to be supportive of that. But there weren't enough to be super disruptive or anything. At BlizzCon, Blizzard President J. Allen Brack apologized, and he said that they moved too fast on their action and they were too slow to communicate to the community. And he ended his apology by saying, quote, "We will do better going forward, but our actions are going to matter more than any of these words," end quote. And what was Brack's first action? To make sure that we knew that that he encourages free speech everywhere, except through official Blizzard channels, and he will not be lifting the 6-month suspension of Blitzchung or the two casters. And he went on to explain during the questioning of the reporter that any message not focused on games can earn a suspension, and that this wasn't about the political nature of the message. And that just prompted me to have a little thought. Can you guys think of any time on a Blizzard stream where it deviated from the game being played and they may have talked about something other than the game, even if it wasn't political?
I'm sure you have an example in mind. He's asking this in a leading way. If you can't tell.
I was hoping you would come with some examples.
I mean, I have some examples, but it sounds like you have something very specific here.
I just remember one time. A bunch of shoutcasters eating whole lemons.
Mm.
Not sure that was super relevant to Overwatch.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Let's camp out here for a second, because I do think this is worth us talking about.
Blood the tent.
Here, I'm with you, Larry. I am okay with this explanation if it's actually true. Like, if Blizzard really was tightly focused on making the game about the game and not about things outside of the game, I would be a little bit better with this reaction. But it's not just the lemon thing. You know, I think of it, and I want to say this and make it very clear. I am not saying they shouldn't be doing this, but like, they were selling pins at BlizzCon in support of all the proceeds went to the Trevor Project. And that is something that is outside of official Blizzard games. Like, it has nothing to do with their games. It is something that is I mean, some people would deem it as political. It's definitely highlighting a social issue, and so he's not just saying we want our official channels to remain about the game. He's saying we only want you to talk about the things that we deem worthy of talking about. And that's where I'm with you. The inconsistency is the part that really, really grinds my gears. It's Blizzard, and it's been their whole thing through this whole situation of having their cake and wanting to eat it too. Like, we're gonna put a halt to this kind of speech, but when it wins us political points with our audience or social justice points with our audience, we're willing to go into those territories. And that's what feels slimy. It's all surrounded in capitalism, and I still just don't buy the shit of just it has nothing to do with the political message. He also mentioned something about the NetEase channel that does Blizzard's PR in China, talking about protecting the pride of China in that tweet that came from one of their official channels, and him being like, we don't review any of that, we don't give it the green light, yada yada. And it's like, but you can do something about it after the fact, and you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know, the whole situation's scuffed.
Yeah, I mean, there are just so many inconsistencies between what they say at one moment and what they actually mean, what they say at one moment, what they say at another moment. It all goes back to, you can say whatever you want as long as it doesn't interfere with our business interests and doesn't impact our shareholders, doesn't impact investors or bottom line. And the irony being that the actions they have chosen to take and have impacted their sponsorships and have impacted their bottom line in significant and meaningful ways. It's just, I mean, we've talked about this before, but it's coming out on stage and saying actions speak louder than words, and then your actions directly counteracting the thing you've just said is the epitome of what they've chosen to do this entire time. And it's frustrating. And it's frustrating too, because, and I'm sure we'll talk about this for your topic as well, Larry, the message that the Blizzard's developers have chosen to put into their games are running exactly counterintuitive to the messages that Blizzard higher ups are imparting to their audience with their actions. Mm-hmm. And I think that discrepancy is resulting in a lot of toxicity towards developers. And some of it is warranted because developers and publishers make terrible, nasty moves as well. But it's difficult. It's difficult when like Hearthstone developers and Overwatch developers are coming out in opposition to what their company is doing. And the games they're making are directly in opposition to what their company is doing. It creates a lot of divisions within people's mind, and a lot of people aren't able to reconcile those things, which can lead to some uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, a lot of consumers aren't going to draw the distinction between corporate level Blizzard and game designer who worked on Overwatch.
Exactly.
And to be fair, like, I don't know that we should put that on people, because who knows who is taking what position. But we have also seen the internal turmoil over this at Blizzard, as employees of the company have been upset over these developments. You mentioned them losing sponsorships. I forgot in my recap here. Specifically, they lost their Mitsubishi partnership, so that all the Mitsubishi advertisement has been removed from the Hearthstone tournament, and they were pretty prominent from what I gather. I'm not much of a Hearthstone watcher, but from what I read. So yeah, and to kind of go back a little bit, just I would be, still upset, but a lot more okay with it if they would just like call it what it is, just be upfront. We can't afford to take this kind of stance, so we're not going to allow any kind of political thing because that's too risky. Because the messaging is not consistent with what we're seeing, and that's only going to make things worse, I think.
Roy Speedrun in the chat says it's all horseshit is what it is. It's literally them asking for forgiveness without changing a damn thing or even admitting they were wrong. I'm not necessarily of the boycott mindset, but I'm not sure I've ever seen a company this huge fumble so hard. And yeah, I think that's the strange thing of like the apology is we moved too fast, but we didn't move fast enough in another regard. Like,
Yeah.
I was also, I am going to say I don't want to call it this, and I guess within doing that, I'm calling it that. I don't necessarily want to call them crocodile tears, but I cringed a little every time he got choked up when talking about this. Especially juxtaposed next to his pausing for applause in the middle of his apology as well. Like, the whole thing seemed very Twilight Zone-y to me, of like, this is the strangest apology ever. Like, he's not trudging through it in any kind of natural cadence. He's expecting people to applaud the fact that, like Roy Speedrun, they're apologizing for something but not changing anything. Like, it was all so strange. And then, you know, he basically like turns around and takes off the cape and is like, "Welcome to Blizzcon," after that. And the whole thing was just so strange. So strange. So.
Yeah. And to touch on your point about the stories running counter to the message of the corporation, in a lot of ways they've primed their audience for this reaction, because people are shaped by stories. They're shaped by stories more than they are shaped by just being taught things or just being told facts. Stories serve a really important purpose in humanity, and they have taught their audience to despise this type of behavior, and that's just a really interesting piece of irony for me.
All right, guys. Any parting thoughts on that before we move into our actual topics?
Nah.
All right. I kind of just want to put this whole Blizzard shit behind us at this point. Like, it's I think it's clear where everyone stands on this now, and there's probably not going to be much to say beyond this.
And that was Luke's nice way of saying, "Larry, this can't be like Fallout 76."
Well, that's why we added the follow-up section, so it doesn't just replace a whole topic. All right. Well, let's move on. Cody, what is your topic for this evening?
My topic is third-party esports tournaments. Specifically, in this case, a third-party Fortnite tournament, which took place recently, and was actually canceled due to griefers. This story comes courtesy of Polygon, Cass Marshall, fantastic writer. And it's all about the Vanish Cup, which is they bill it as one of the larger third-party solo Fortnite tournaments in North America. And a key point of clarification for this is that it is an online tournament. It is not an in-person tournament. It's solos. The prize pool was around $3,000, which sort of pales in comparison to the number, like the cash prize pools Epic offers. But for a third-party tournament, it's not terrible. But the whole thing sort of fell apart once 3 players who were operating under alt accounts decided to gather together and essentially collaborate on some griefing, grab a bunch of rocket launchers and basically just break the tournament rules, work together as a team and try to take down players. Their actions resulted in the tournament being canceled with no new date announced, although they according to the tournament organizer, who operates under the name I'm Papa Max, there is a date set, they just haven't announced it yet. And so I kind of want to use this as an opportunity to talk about larger things, although I do think this is an interesting story of what can happen in esports when it's not in person, which is what we mostly talk about on this show. There is another side to esports tournaments. and in a lot of ways, it's a little bit more of an old school idea.
I love that something online is an old school idea.
I know. Well, the whole dynamic in esports is so fascinating to me because, like, this is in no other. Well, I guess there's obviously cheating in traditional sports, but it's not like in the middle of a basketball game, two players from different teams decide to team up and somehow break the game. That just doesn't happen.
They're both holding onto the ball, just spinning around at half court.
Yeah. Griefing doesn't exactly happen because there's no anonymity in traditional sports. You know who they are. You're watching them in person. You see their face. It's just an interesting example of how, like, this particular corner of the esports world, there's still potential for the world to break in ways that are interesting when you're thinking about an industry that's trying to get its feet underneath it and trying to become more legitimate. What do you guys think? Because the article, I mean, does mention a few ways that online tournaments can be advantageous for tournament organizers and players. But what do you guys think of the concept of an online esports tournament, especially in the world of esports today?
I like it in terms of it provides accessibility to something that I think a lot of people like trying to enter that kind of scene might not have access to.
Definitely.
So that's really cool, but I don't think you're ever going to have like any top tier tournament happen online just because of this. If it's not griefing, it's something else. It's impossible to secure something like that perfectly. And so putting people in an environment where they're all in the same building, you know who everybody is, got control over the network, like that's the only way to have this thing with any level of consistency.
Yeah, well, and online tournaments are certainly not just kind of small potatoes either. In terms of, I mean, even this event was going to have massive viewership, but the like Overwatch Contenders is all online. You know, so there's massive. That's a massive competitive league that's officially not licensed. It's an official Blizzard Blizzard league. I don't know, but it is still. I mean, like everything in esports, it's still very much a wild west. I think one of the things that's mentioned, one of the quotes in here that I found kind of interesting was from. Okay, let me ask this as an aside, guys. I'm a huge esports fan, but I still struggle with calling these individuals by their tags. Like,
I do too.
Like, I'm watching Worlds, you know, and there's like the Shy and Showmaker people. It like, I don't know. There's a part of me, old school, okay, boomer me. That wants to be like, just use your real names, please. All right, I don't want to fucking call you Hydration. Let's just call you by your given name. How do you guys feel about that?
I like the use of the gamer tag, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm not as old as you are.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of laughed when I was talking about the tournament organizer's name by accident, but
that's true.
It's just because sometimes the names themselves run counter to the legitimacy that the sport and the industry as a whole is trying to achieve. But like, I do like the idea of like names and identities are somewhat different in the world of online gaming. They always have been, and so I think carrying that over is, for me, I think super interesting, kind of honors like the legacy of where this stuff is coming from. There should probably be a screening method, and I obviously there is, but like there's actually an esports sketch on SNL, I think last week.
Yeah,
with Chance the Rapper, and I think there's a whole bit in it where he's like a traditional sports announcer, and he's been tasked with covering this esports event. And he's interviewing a player after the match, and he tells the player to turn around. And what's the player's name? It's on the back of their jersey. It's something like Panda Sex or something
Yeah,
like that.
Panda Sex 6'9" or something like that.
He's like, nope, not going to say that. But I don't know. I think if you're trying to find legitimacy as in a traditional audience, you're going to struggle. But I don't know if they're 100% doing that. I think it's an interesting element of esports. It's an interest. You can build up like a cult of personality around it too. There's a whole branding aspect of it. So
I don't think it's totally foreign to traditional sports. I mean, granted, some people change their names completely in real life, like Meta World Peace.
Yes.
Yeah, Chad Ochocinco.
They're nicknames, but it's not like there's some ridiculous ones in esports. Yeah,
well, I think about like the Toronto off-tank FRD. Before that, in Contenders, he was Fried Winner with all of the vowels removed, and they made him change it from what it was originally, which was Fried Wiener.
Of course. Of course.
So there is a little bit of QA that goes in.
There has to be.
Choosing these names and allowing them into these official channels, but it just makes it weird because I'm Papa Max makes a great point.
Yeah, it makes it awkward when you're reading it out loud.
Well, there's a caster, which he now is like the GM for 100 Thieves, but he's a league caster called Papa Smithy, and everyone just calls him Papa, and it's just strange to me. It's strange.
Yeah, disconcerting.
Roy Speedrun says, "Really? I think the tags are pretty fun. It's fun."
He says rappers have their dumbass names. Why can't we?
What did he say?
He said rappers have their dumbass names. Why can't we? I guess if somebody can be Soulja Boy, I can be Panda Sex 69. All right. Anyway, I'm Papa Max. Makes a great point in a quote here. He says, quote, "We pulled, it was like 35,000 or 40,000 viewers, I believe, throughout all players' streams." And you're just like, that's all exposure for the game itself. I think Epic just has zero regard for third-party tournaments and creating a system where we can create a custom event and invite all the players to remove these risks, end quote. And I think that's just, that's a great point that he's making. Like, third-party tournaments are not just a great grounds for players to get their feet wet. And, you know, like I grew up playing sports, organized sports, and I miss the competition. I don't have time to join like a rec league and go, you know, play because they're practicing at like 4:00 in the afternoon, you know? I've thought a lot about joining an esports team that plays in these kind of third party tournaments. So it's a great opportunity just to have fun, get some experience and organized play. But it's also a great opportunity for observers, like the people who control the in-game cameras to get their stuff, for casters to get experience within it. They're pulling these resources together and creating these productions voluntarily, but it is bringing massive exposure. There's a big company called Broadcast GG that does a lot of Overwatch content in Contenders, especially in some of the more undercovered regions like South America. And I think for a while they were pulling all of those resources together for free just from people who wanted to get experience doing it. And I think that companies would be wise to recognize the exposure that's being given to their games because of these. And these are companies who profit off of exposure in the opposite direction. And so they should be well familiar with how important these things are and how many eyes it can bring. And I think just the disregard for it from up top is something I'm glad that I'm Papa Max noted.
Yeah, and it's something that I think that's something that Epic is noting as well. I know someone at Epic made a statement recently saying that they would invest, part of their plan moving forward with esports is to invest a little bit more in third-party tournaments, just to kind of like bolster them with some of Epic's resources. Because you're right, it's a great feeder system for esports talent on both in front of and behind the camera. And I think I don't mean to be flippant by saying this, but it is like, I sort of think about, especially at this level and lower, like third-party tournaments are kind of like higher level intramural sports. which is great. I mean, I think it's great. Like, as you said, Luke, you can find pretty much a third-party tournament for whatever you're feeling and for whatever level you're capable of playing at, which is pretty great. Like, they're the more local things. There are more national things, more international things. But it's just a great opportunity to, I mean, the appeal of it is accessibility, like you said, Larry. There are obviously drawbacks, and this is the case of some of the drawbacks to it. But I think it would suit Epic and other developers and publishers whose games are being played in all these venues to kind of keep an eye on this stuff, and to not just shrug it off as, oh, it's not our esports league, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this, Ninja Squirrel?
I think I've already voiced them. The gamer tags are awesome. No, I love Epic's business model, right? Anytime anybody wants anything, yeah, we can do that.
Well, we got the money. We'll just hire 30 more people to be able to accomplish that. Sure.
I know that's not the point you're making, but no, I think that Epic would be wise for sure to invest in this and to make this easier. I'm just restating the same things you guys have already said. It only benefits them. There's no reason not to.
Yeah. I guess I'm sort of curious overall about the future of these kinds of tournaments, because it and Luke, I think you'll have the most to say about this because you are sort of the most capable of prognosticating kind of where esports is headed. But it seems as the industry itself gets larger and larger, these tournaments simultaneously fill a very specific role within the industry, and also sort of the discrepancy gets larger and larger between like where developers are seeing their professional leagues going and where these tournaments are going. Obviously they fulfill different needs, but I think more and more developers are investing in their own leagues and kind of shrugging this stuff off, although Epic has done that and sort of starting to correct it. But where do you see the future of third-party tournaments going as this industry just kind of balloons even more in the future?
See, I think I agree with you to an extent, but I also think there's a flip side of that coin where the exact opposite is true. Mm-hmm. Where there are so many, I think about, especially like Overwatch and League have such powerful observation tools built into their just standard client. You don't have to have any additional software to be able to create a quality broadcast. You just need 3 or 4 different people who hop in as observers, being able to check out different places and know how to run OBS. If you watch the Overwatch World Cup over the weekend, you saw casters had, let me see if I've got enough slack. They had these things on their desks and they were running their own broadcasts while they casted the games, like switching between scenes and pulling up graphics. They weren't doing all of the observing and stuff. But my point is that the tools are so accessible anymore that creating a quality broadcast at any level is achievable. And I think because of that, we're in look, Overwatch, I think, is maybe an outlier example because their esports are so poorly run, especially once you get beyond the Overwatch League level. All of their tier 2, tier 3 shit is just scuffed. The Overwatch World Cup, scuffed. Like, I don't know if you guys saw any criticism around the Overwatch World Cup, but it was a nightmare. Teams spending $60,000 to fly halfway across the world, get bounced after playing for an hour and a half, like, because they only played one preliminary game in a single elimination tournament or whatever, like, scuffed. But I say all that to say Overwatch has handed a lot of their production, especially in the tier 2 and almost exclusively in the tier 3, over to like Broadcast GG, these people who are doing these, who are hosting third-party tournaments, who are being brought into the fold, not as like employees of the company to do this, but like kind of as official partners. And it's I'm sure it's a way of shaving costs. Like Broadcast GG foots the bill for bringing all the talent together, and I'm sure they get some sort of kickback from Blizzard for producing these things. But I worry with it that it's going to become an excuse for the bigger companies to just say, we are going to solely focus on the top 1% of the top 1% of talent in these games, and to hell with everything else, there are other people who are willing to do it for free, and we don't have to invest in it. And so I think to answer your question, I think third-party tournaments are going to just grow in their popularity and their significance. And as smaller companies who aren't getting their foot into the door, like in terms of sponsorship, get a hold of these, hey, that's 50,000 eyes that can get on my brand from this Fortnite tournament who may not have an official sponsor. Like, oh, it becomes a whole other like influencer marketing opportunity almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you are right about the accessibility. And I think that can be a great gift and also kind of a curse in some ways, and that because the technology is so accessible, it means that anybody can get it, which means that there are so many people out there doing it. But that also means that the people will always the cream always finds a way to rise to the top. That means people are going to have to be more creative, more talented, and kind of more personable to be able to grab people's attentions with these kinds of things. And maybe it'll mean that there'll be more specialized tournaments that kind of have a gimmick or have a specific draw for people. The more that there are, but I do tend to agree with you. I don't mean to come across as saying that like it's the end of third-party tournaments are going to disappear because all these big companies are investing in their own like professional leagues. I think they both meet a different need, and I think it's important to have both. I think it creates a healthier ecosystem overall, and it creates a healthier pipeline for talent as well.
Yeah, speaking of personalized tournaments, if somebody gets a May Snowball Offensive tournament off the ground, I am in.
I'm sure you can find it, man. I'm sure you can find it. Join like, I'm not kidding. If that's something you would want to do, you could join like Jane's Discord. They're doing pugs and all kinds of shit all the time over there. So, and they host tournaments and, I think they have even like mock leagues that go on. So there's a world for it.
May Snowball Offensive player Ninja Squirrel.
That's right.
The May is Bay tournament.
That's right. With his comments on Hong Kong coming right up.
Only Hong Kong all the time.
Yeah, it's and also with esports growing, there are so many people climbing on top of each other to try to get to the top, and it's just creating more and more of an opportunity for prices to just be undercut and the bottom of the market to fall out because, hey, there's tons of people just doing this shit for free. Like, why pay?
Yeah, there's only going to be room for one person to ascend to the Conan O'Brien of esports coverage.
That's right. So, I don't know. I love esports. I'm excited to see where it goes. I think it's interesting because there really isn't like a traditional sports equivalent like we become so comfortable trying to find. I guess the closest thing would be like, oh, there's an undergirding like amateur scene in basketball and football within the collegiate system that has been long taken advantage of in a pretty predatory way, which is hopefully coming to an end. But that's really the only equivalent, but that's not something that you can't create a college football team from your basement. All right? Yeah. You can create a third-party esports tournament that is wildly successful from the comfort of your own home. You don't even have to have pants on.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the farther along in esports life cycle we get and the bigger it becomes, the less and more useful the analogs to traditional sports become. It's just interesting. The conversation around this stuff fascinates me too. I'm not as knowledgeable about it, but even as someone who just has a cursory knowledge, this stuff. Yeah. I mean, the future of it is interesting and problematic in so many ways.
I saw you drop an esports topic into the show notes. I was like, hell yeah, I get to talk about esports and it's not me bringing it up.
We got to cover each other sometimes.
All right. Well, let's move on. Guys, I want to talk about Google Stadia.
What's that?
Exactly. Stadia. That's where I want to start. Do you realize there is less than 2 weeks until Google Stadia starts shipping out to users?
I literally
did not.
didn't.
You did not,
Until I read
exactly.
that in the show notes, I'd forgotten all about it, to be honest.
Okay, so there's my first question. The first question I have in the show notes here is, where do you feel like we are at in terms of awareness and excitement for its release? And I know you're exaggerating, Larry, when you say, what is Google Stadia?
Yeah.
But it's not far off, right?
No. In fact, my wife and I talked about game streaming earlier today. She wasn't aware of any of that technology coming up. And in that conversation, I did not even mention Google Stadia because it had fallen completely off my radar.
It's insane. It's so wild. Like Google, massive company, investing hella dollars into this as a platform, opening up first-party studios to work on games that they have not yet revealed for this brand new platform that they're launching. Like, and yet here we are 2 weeks out. They own multiple ad platforms across the internet. And here we are, 3 people deeply ingrained in the gaming community, feeling like we haven't seen anything about it. Like
the first party games in particular, like anytime a new console is launching, like that is such a big thing. Like, what are the launch titles? And the fact that we're 2 weeks out and like we've not heard anything about those games still, like that's
you can play Destiny 2. It's 3 years old. 2 years old.
I don't know. It's so weird. Like and maybe part of it is the Kojima effect that like the entire conversation in gaming has been consumed with Death Stranding for the past week or so. But also, like, I think it's interesting, and I'll draw a parallel to the launch of Apple TV Plus that happened recently, which is Apple's streaming service. These are 2 massive companies entering into an industry that they're not totally familiar with, and it shows how even companies of this size and with this much experience can fumble the ball when it comes to starting something new. Like, people literally didn't know how to access Apple TV Plus. They're like, how do I get to the Jason Momoa?
He says that in the past tense, like I know now.
Exactly. I had to read tutorials online to figure out how to do it, and to access shows that I'm not going to watch and I have no interest in watching. But I don't know. It's a sign that like this takes a lot of work and a lot of experience to get down, and like even Sony and Microsoft have only recently figured out how to do this right.
When you say this, what do you mean?
I mean, like launching a service, not like this, but launching a service that people need to have a new frame of understanding. Like Microsoft is leading, I think, very carefully into what their next console is going to be. We have an idea, but they haven't really dropped it yet. Sony has bungled PlayStation View and like all these other things. What was their streaming service? PS Now.
Yeah. But still
they bungled
going.
Which it's very much still going, but the awareness around it is not nearly what I think they hope it would be.
Roy Speedrun said Apple TV launched, and I expect the same comment about Stadia in 2 weeks.
Yes.
I just think entering a new world takes a lot of like, you need to really know what you're doing, and even Google and Apple sometimes don't know what they're doing because these are new worlds they're entering.
Well,
yeah.
Go ahead.
With Apple, my sense is that that Apple maybe felt like we're Apple and we've released something new, and that's probably sufficient. But with
they
Google,
also launched with like unique programming, like exclusive programming that they thought would grab people. I don't even know if Stadia has that I'm aware of at the moment.
No.
Yeah, we don't know about it. If they do, and maybe they'll go the Apex route and like, hey, we've announced this awesome thing day one. But with Google, it feels like that's deliberate. And we've talked about this a little bit before, but that's kind of Google's MO. They do these slow walking, soft launches of things, and just kind of wait to see if they're really going to take off or not. And with this particular, so like thinking about Google Plus and and even Gmail, like they both had the same sort of launch process of, we got the beta users. All right, the next wave are the people that get invited in and invites. Boom! Now the public can come in, and it never makes a huge splash. At the end of the day, Gmail was successful. Google Plus was not. But I just don't think that sort of like soft walking into a thing is going to work in this particular industry.
Is the 2 weeks, so the thing launching in 2 weeks, is that just beta access?
That's the Founders Edition. So that is
Founders Edition.
Yeah,
okay.
that's the controller and all that. But even that is in stages. So if you pre-ordered, it's being shipped out in waves. So even if you pre-ordered, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get your Founders Edition, which I guess is the controller and the Chromecast. You're not even guaranteed to get that on the day and date of the launch. And I think what's interesting here is how we're talking about it as a product, right? Like we're comparing this a lot to services with PlayStation View, PlayStation Now, Gmail, Google Plus, like whereas I feel like they tried to announce it as something that we would see more as like a console launch in a way. Like, yes, we understand it's a service, but I think they had a recognition that people love hardware. They love being able to like feel what they're purchasing. And so, hey, here's a controller. Well, you understand that all other controllers will work on this, ones that you probably already have in your home, but we're going to launch this controller alongside it. And I really don't know if anybody has figured this out. Like Game Pass, I wouldn't say was a wild success right at the start. I think people liked the concept, struggled to understand the concept particularly well at its launch, and it's since grown. It's been fostered in a really great way. Sony is light years away from even starting to figure out how to do this kind of shit. Like,
yeah,
they have been releasing details about the PlayStation 5 via Wired.com, guys. Like Sony is not some grandmaster of like divulging information, right? And the two examples you gave, Larry, despite the success of Gmail, like there are tons of examples of things that Google has bungled completely, from both a product standpoint and a services standpoint.
Google Plus, Google Wave.
Yeah, you're
Google
much more
Glass.
locked into that. Google Glass, yeah. And even Apple. Like, Apple is still riding the waves of being the product kings of, you know, what, 6-7 years ago?
2004? Sorry.
You know,
That's not
like, but they're not really great at anything outside of iPhone launches anymore. Like, I don't feel like the iPads create as much excitement. I don't feel like there's enough difference between like the watch models to create a ton of excitement. And I think you've got your like obviously hardcore Apple fan base who's gonna go after all of those things, just like people voraciously went after Google Plus when it launched. But
Yeah, what kind of loser would do that?
exactly. But you're not going to find success in these markets just by speaking to your most dedicated fan base. You've got to extend beyond this. And it's just, this is something that I feel like gamers should really, really care about, that Google has not allowed us to care about because they haven't kept it in front of us.
No, they've done a pretty terrible job of like, we're plugged into this world and we didn't know that it was or I forgot that it was coming in 2 weeks, which is even worse than not knowing in the first place.
Yeah.
Like I had to look it up. I knew it was coming out this month, but for the purpose of the topic, I was like, it's like Google Stadia release date. And even when you do that, guys, you're typing in Google Stadia release date, and you know how Google will serve you like an auto response answer? All it says in the autofill is November 2019. No date, no nothing. You have to like actually search it and get the actual date. So it's like Google can't even figure out their own, which that served you through like an automated system. But still, the point is like this is something that when it was announced, I mean, I was on this podcast saying this is going to be the biggest thing for games since online connectivity. And I still believe that as a concept. I think the concept of streaming games is going to be as revolutionary as online gaming. I thought Stadia was going to be more central to that shift. And it just doesn't, I don't know if it's that they don't care, if it's that they don't understand, like, but Google's got the money to go pay people who do understand. So that doesn't seem like a great excuse.
Yeah. Part of the problem for me is personally, in terms of like having confidence in the idea, is not so much the idea, but Google itself. Google, because of, I mean, it operates, like you said, Larry, like its rollouts are kind of very old school, not old school, but like old school just means something different in Silicon Valley at this point because things move so quickly, but like old school tech.
Boomer.
But like Google has, at any given time, Google has so many different projects and has so many different plates spinning in the air and is very willing to drop plates at a moment's notice. They've done, obviously, you mentioned a couple of products they've done that, or services they've done that with in the past. I don't know if, like, I don't feel like I want to invest in a service, and then it's just shut down and I lose access to the games that I would access through that service. And I'm afraid that if this doesn't work out for Google, they'll just kind of drop it.
Yeah. To be honest, the only company that I have confidence in, and I'm going to be written off as a fanboy here, but the only company that I'm really confident in is Microsoft.
Oh, Microsoft.
Microsoft. Yeah.
Say it all together.
PlayStation has had a tendency to do the same thing, to have these like really innovative new ideas. Granted, they do a better job of pushing them, but if it's not working out, they'll just let that thing die quietly.
Yeah, I think even that is an overstatement of how committed Sony is to even pushing them. Like, they've let off the gas multiple times leading into the launch of things. I mean, I think VR lacked a lot of push there at the home stretch of release. PlayStation View, I don't know if PlayStation View ever had a push outside of
no.
They were like, and powers. All right, nobody clap for that. We'll be abandoning this very shortly. Like, you know, so I think even that's, but Sony's whole strategy is we're just going to make a better box. And that's worked for them up to this point, and it's probably going to continue to work for them in the future. So I don't know if it's necessarily where they need to be strong right now.
Yeah. But I'm very optimistic about Microsoft. Project X Cloud. Is that what it's called?
Yep.
Or is it just X Cloud?
Project X Cloud, I think.
Thanks.
Project X Cloud Games Pass.
and I don't want to write Stadia off. I may get excited once it comes out, but right now there's no reason for me to be excited. Like, it's a cool service, but someone else is offering it, and I know what kind of catalog theirs is going to include. Stadia, I just have no idea.
Yeah, I also think there's a lot of confusion around how exactly it's rolling out, like who's going to have access to the actual service, because okay, you're shipping out Founder stuff on this date, but can I still access this from YouTube? Like, can I still access it from my browser? What phones are going to be supported here at the start, or is it only for these Founder members who are signing up? Like, I think there's a lot of confusion around that rollout too. That, I mean, it's what we've seen in gaming all around. In some ways, Google is fitting right into the gaming culture, in the sense of like, here's our trifurcated launches that make absolutely no fucking sense. If you're in tier 1, you get it here, tier 2, then with this, and then tier 3, get it then. Like, that's what we've seen as a trend across the spectrum, but I don't think Google's doing it intentionally. I just think they really have no idea how to launch this thing. But Cody, to your point about they're constantly spinning plates and willing to let things fall, like, this is going to sound strange. Like I'm saying one thing, but I'm not sure if gaming culture is the place you want to do that.
I know.
Like, it's so large, but yet the conversation is so like niche and packed in tight. Like, we all kind of have the same channels that we go to, that things get mega amplified. Like, yeah, you can abandon Google Plus because I'm sure there's people who love social media and stuff like that, but there's not like social media aficionados out there and like really deep fan cultures around them to that are going to get bummed when you, or just outright pissed when you abandon something. I just don't think gaming is the space you want to go in and be like, we're going to try and have a really quick ripcord out if it doesn't go our way immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is YouTube gaming still a thing?
They're making another
maybe.
big push on their live streaming side. I don't know. I think YouTube gaming as a brand is gone, but I know they just signed over at least one, like, I'm trying to remember. I think he's with 100 Thieves as well. He's like a content producer for 100 Thieves. They signed him over exclusively to stream over on YouTube. Everyone thought he was going to go to Mixer, but yeah. Anyway, yeah. I feel like you were going somewhere there.
The reason I brought it up was, as you're saying, like, is gaming the place to do that kind of rollout and that kind of abandonment if it comes down to it? I feel like you're not going to get more than one crack at this and doing it well.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of ways, they've already taken their crack at it with gaming. But yeah, if they launch this and then just mothball it, like, that's it. I think this is their one shot, and they got to do it well. I'm just not confident that that's what's happening.
Yeah, I think that the concept, I mean, I think we all like the concept and like the actual idea of it. It's just a hard thing to sell, because you're right, Luke. Like, in some ways there seems to be confusion about like there's a confusion, I guess, about the launch of it, and also just the concept itself. Like, how do you sell something that they're trying to sell as if it's hardware, in an industry that loves hardware, but the core idea of it is not hardware. The core idea of it is to expand the concept of the hardware you're playing it on. It's not coming other than you get a controller, but you can play it with any controller. You don't get a box. You can play it on any box. It's kind of a hard concept to just like sell in a traditional setting, like a showcase, like what Microsoft will probably do with the next system it's doing. Microsoft seems to be taking steps towards this future. Well, I mean, we've talked about this before. While Google is like blasting off to the moon with no parachute.
Yeah, well, and all of that with the parallel recognition that they are trying to monetize this thing as if it is a traditional.
Yeah.
So yes, you're paying for access to it, but hey, you want to play Watch Dogs 2 or Watch Dogs Legion, sorry, $60. You know, like, they're selling it like it's a physical product or like a downloaded product, when in reality it's just $60 access to a server that has the game on it.
Yeah.
It's wild. So we're kind of touching where I want to end this, and I want us to talk on a scale from 1 to 10. How comfortable are you with the long-term outlook of Stadia? And on a scale from 1 to 10, and I guess you can kind of roll this into this as well. Like, what do you think the number you give in the first response means for the future outlook of the concept as a whole, and especially as Xbox gets into rolling out their own similar service?
For Stadia in particular, the long-term outlook, I feel, is like, I would put it at a 3. Like, I have very low confidence. I'm not at a 1, like, this is definitely going to fail. But I'm going to have to see something big to make me think that this is going to be around for a while. From a company that, as I love Google products, but they have a reputation with me of not sticking around with products. But for the outlook of the concept as a whole, like, I think that's a 10, man. I think this is where the future's moving. It's just a matter of who's going to get us there.
Yeah, you don't think that Stadia being the first butt to break the surface tension of the water cannonballing into this pool is going to affect that?
I don't think so, because I think it would be different if it was Sony coming out here and doing it poorly, or Microsoft coming out poorly. But for me, like, Google being someone that's outside the gaming sphere coming in and failing at gaming, I don't think that's going to hurt the concept.
Yeah, I mean, I'd actually probably put my confidence a little bit higher, probably around like a 4 or 5, only because I think and we don't know how much Google has invested in this, but I would have to imagine the buy-in is just significantly higher than for other services they've kind of launched before.
That's true. Getting first-party games onto this platform is probably more costly than launching Wave, where you could collaborate with some spreadsheets.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot more on the line, so I think they might try to stick around with it a little bit more. But I do think, I mean, we've seen plenty of examples where the first to the punch isn't exactly always the first to like break through. And so I think it will be someone. I have confidence in the concept as a whole. I don't know how you want. I hate kind of putting a numerical value on something like that.
Putting them in here.
So I'd probably put that at like an 8 or a 9, because I do think this is the way that gaming is going. I think I have a lot more confidence that Microsoft will probably take this over time and kind of commit to it and make it kind of the norm. Plus, I mean, Kojima said everything's heading towards streaming, gaming, movies, TV, so you know it's got to be true.
That's true. That's true. I put my future outlook for Stadia around a 3 as well with Hilarion. While your impassioned argument about the money that Google's putting behind it is almost convincing enough to make me move that metric. I also think Google has enough money that they can look back in 2 years and be like, what was this Stadia line item again? We're not really quite sure what that was all about. And it's mostly because I see them missing the flagship first party exclusive thing that they're developing in-house. They have total control over, that shows we are committed to this long term. There are games that are going to be exclusive to Stadia, but I don't think any of them are like what we would traditionally deem as like AAA experiences.
Yeah. And that's something you have to announce. Like, I would have liked to know more and more consistently.
Mm-hmm.
Like even the games that they did announce, I haven't heard anything about them since they just showed a screenshot on a big projector.
Because at this point, it almost feels like the sell is, hey guys, play all of these games you can play literally anywhere else at a much more unreliable fashion. Like, and I just don't. I guess the sell is you can play these games wherever you go, and that's something that certainly appeals to me. But I just feel like it needs to be more than that, because Switch is doing a fantastic job of giving me tons of gaming options on the go.
Mm-hmm.
Mobile gaming, it continues to improve. Like, and I really don't feel like blowing through a data plan to play a shittier version of a game I can play on a console, you know. But I do also worry about the outlook of this as the future of it, that people are going to look and be like, Stadia already tried that. Because I don't think the public at large has the nuance to look and say, Google tends to pick up and abandon really quickly. And they're just going to be like, oh, well, didn't Google try that? And they're like the biggest tech company in the world and it didn't work. Why would it be any different with any other company? And so I would put future outlook at a 7.
The one thing about that prevents me from going with you there is the fact that Microsoft is on this. Because Microsoft launched Xbox with this vision of the constantly online gamer, and everybody hated it universally. Not universally, but just about. It wrecked their launch, right? But here we are doing exactly what they said we'd be doing.
But it's different. Like, even when they announced that, the advantages of it were so kind of abstract in terms of how it benefited us as people who play games. Whereas I think the value proposition here is a lot clearer at the top in terms of, play games anywhere. You can stream it on any device. You don't need a high-end computer to play these games at the top specs. Like, I think that is a clear value proposition that if it's bungled, I don't know. Like, I think the messaging about always online is a lot clearer now. I agree with you. Xbox is doing the same exact thing. They're just talking about it in a way that's a lot different. It feels a lot different.
Yeah. we didn't catch it, but earlier Roy Speedrun said, I mean, realistically, what percentage of people have internet good enough for Stadia? And do we know what kind of internet that's going to require yet?
Yeah,
Or
they
we
announced.
They released information on that.
Let me look it up. Google Stadia network specs.
I mean, it's a legitimate question, though.
Yeah.
When we talked about this originally, we talked about the infrastructure that needs to be put in place to be able to even make it work for most people.
Google recommends 10 megabits per second, which will deliver 720p video with stereo sounds.
Okay.
Which I don't think is totally unreasonable. But again, you can play anywhere else. You can even play in handheld on Switch most games at higher
720p.
than at 720 and docked at 900p for a lot of those games. Yeah. At a much more reliable clip. Like, can't imagine playing this game riding in a car down the road on a phone and maintaining a stable enough connection for it to work. I can take my Switch with me and it's going to be fine. So,
the use that my wife and I kicked around earlier may be unique to us. I don't know, but I don't even think about this service as like an on-the-go service so much as I think about, oh, cool, we can not buy 2 Xboxes next go around and still play the same game together.
yeah. All right, guys. Well, let's move on to our final topic. Larry, what are you bringing to the table for us? And I've got to run for just a moment, so you guys carry on without me.
So I know you said I wasn't allowed to talk about Blizzard anymore, but
ever again with one of the biggest gaming companies in the world. No more conversations. Continue.
So my topic is actually about Overwatch 2, which got announced at BlizzCon, and we all saw it coming. Because it leaked, and it leaked hard. I don't know. I'm not really sure how to approach this topic with Lugon because I was going to jump straight into it.
We can cover this. We'll just bring him in when he gets back.
All right. So they released a story trailer for Overwatch 2, which was 8 minutes long.
Yeah.
And a gameplay trailer. Did you get a chance to watch that as well?
Yeah, I watched both of them. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I guess just what were your initial reactions to the story trailer? What'd you think of that? And what did you think of an 8-minute story trailer as an announcement for a game?
I'm gonna put at the top here that I find it. And I think a lot of other people, a lot of games journalists and critics have found it difficult to reconcile the two halves of the Blizzard coin at the moment. I'm gonna say that at the top because I find it difficult to like.
Let's talk about that at the top then. I was going to put that at the end, but
yeah, I find myself at odds like trying to talk about Blizzard products because I am actively boycotting them.
Yeah, I haven't played Overwatch since the Blitzchung incident.
I haven't either, and I don't plan on it. I just I find myself at odds about like I want to be able to talk about Blizzard because I think their products like shape the industry and are really important to the industry. And if I'm being honest, like the trailer did a lot for me emotionally and just like, in terms of my connection to it. It's just the company that is the event around which it was released and around the company around which it was released is just kind of scummy. And so there's an ethical and kind of like a just pure entertainment divide in terms of the way I'm thinking about Blizzard right now, and I'm still actively trying to reconcile those two halves.
Yeah, that's fair. And I'm in the same boat of I am currently I am boycotting Blizzard at the moment. But I want to look at what's been put out there and appreciate the art that's been rendered by the people who may not necessarily hold the same values, even 100%. If at the end of the day, I won't be buying that product.
And I think that's where I kind of come down. Like, it's impossible to deny the artistry of like this trailer, and the Diablo 4 trailer was awesome. It was, I don't know if you watched that. It was super moody and like super dark, had some awesome, like horrific imagery in it. Getting back to those like kind of dark, gory Diablo roots of Diablo 2. But like this trailer, I watched it. First of all, Overwatch at this point has I feel like it's kind of earned the right to like reveal itself with an 8-minute long story trailer because people love these characters. People love the small snippets of story we've gotten from their animated shorts. Like I'd love for them to release like a Blu-ray set, but even just like a downloadable set of like these shorts, like how Pixar will occasionally release a series of short films that they screen before their films. But like the Overwatch 2 trailer, I'm not afraid to admit that I teared up.
I did too. And I was like, why? Why am I so connected to this? This is why I wanted to talk about it.
Exactly. I found myself tearing up because part of it is just the amount of time I've sunk into that world and those characters. Even if like it's not a story-based game. Like I hear those voices in my head. I can hear them saying things. I know the bonds between them, not as well as some lore hunters, but well enough to understand the characters. And like, I'm a sucker for any scenario where the characters you love seem down and out, and then a friendly force swoops in to save the day. It's the reason like I still tear up over Helm's Deep when I watch that sequence in the second Lord of the Rings movie. I am just a sucker for those sequences, and this trailer delivered on that like in spades and with style. And like we'll probably talk about like all the things that the trailer also reveals in terms of gameplay wise, but like it's impossible to deny the artistry that went into making this.
So Luke, welcome back. The things we covered are the difficulty in reconciling our feelings about Blizzard with our feelings about Overwatch 2, and even specifically the trailer reveals themselves. And we are currently talking about the trailer. We had a bonding moment over admitting that we both teared up over this trailer a little bit. And, the strange, like, why was this trailer so emotionally impactful on me?
Yeah, it's hard. It's like Thanksgiving. It's like going home for Thanksgiving. You know, it's like, man, I love the food. I love spending time with my family, but we got this uncle over here who just believes some shitty things about the world and talks about them a lot, and it just kind of ruins it. You know, like that's Blizzard right now for me.
And that uncle happens to own the house that you're Thanksgiving in.
Yeah, he controls the television. You know, he's just and it really sucks because Overwatch has been such a big part of my gaming life this entire generation. Well, since the release of Overwatch for the last 3 years, like, and I have a lot of fond memories and great stories attached to Overwatch, and it's hard to reconcile those things because I want to be principled. I want to stand my ground, but I also recognize that this is an experience I'm been alive for almost 30 years, and there's not another game that's really connected with me in the way that Overwatch has. And so that's why I'm kind of like, look, with the response at BlizzCon, with J. Allen Brack, you know, and his non-apology at the beginning of the event, I was like, this is my opportunity to just move on from this. I know who you are. I am going to, there are decisions I will have to make based off of that knowledge, but this isn't changing. Like, there's no conversation I can have over this turkey leg with my uncle that's going to change his mind on the shitty thing that he believes, but doesn't mean I'm going to stop coming to his house for Thanksgiving because there's so much else here that I cherish, right? The only difference is that my uncle is profiting off of me and in this scenario as well. But
he charges everyone in your family $60 to show up, and you all pay.
Yeah, microtransactions for the stuffing as well. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think about it when I go back to listen. But in terms of the story trailer, it was cool. I'm not I'm not one of those guys who's like, all right, well, I really need to know about Zen. It's been 3 years. We have no lore on Zen. Like,
Yeah,
I get people that are like that, but I'm just not like that.
So I'm not like an after the lore thing. Like Snoke got cut in half and died, and I don't know where. I don't care if I ever do. But but what this trailer, like the Overwatch shorts, the Overwatch trailers, like they do such a great job of short storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Like they tell you so much about these characters in so little time. They produce these deeply emotional moments with just the quickness of it. I'm so impressed by it.
Mm-hmm.
Gaming trailers, like they excite me, but they never really impact me. The only exception to that was the Halo trailers back in the day, and that's what I felt like watching this short. I felt like I was back in high school watching the Halo 3 Believe trailers. And I got a bit misty-eyed at one point. I just hats off to the people that make these things, because they do a great job with this stuff.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to see them, like, you know, they've produced comic books. I'd love to see like a full-on animated show or an animated movie in this universe. Like that kind of thing would be really interesting to me.
I mean, we talked about Riot entering into the world of animation. I'm still surprised that Blizzard hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I mean, these things are incredible. They are. There's just you're right. The art in it is not just the animation and the voice acting, but the actual art of telling like a pretty compelling story within the span of 4 to 8 minutes. That's tough to do in any medium, let alone in a medium and a game where the story and the lore is not like the focus. Like, again, I don't know much about the lore of Overwatch other than what is kind of like spotlighted in the game and like kind of what I read about occasionally online when people get upset about Soldier 76 being announced as a gay character. But like
only in North America though, not in China.
True. We wouldn't want to upset them.
Is that
that's true.
Yeah, that's true.
Sorry, Larry. The uncle's belief system just keeps going.
Which, when you really think about it, doesn't actually mean anything. Like,
yeah.
But I still find myself drawn in by this.
Mm-hmm.
I think the brief glimpses of the world we get are awesome, and I think this one is longer than most of their other shorts, for obvious reasons. So I found it really compelling.
And telling so much story, like you could be completely unfamiliar with Overwatch and still piece together everything from this short. And I love the story. It's basically the Avengers Hero Registration Act story in a nutshell. You had these people, they saved the world from this calamity, and then they were outlawed and not allowed to work together anymore. They're all like heartbroken and separated, but things have gotten so bad that here they are. They're willing to step up and risk it all to save the world again. And that story, like, it was a really compelling story. Like seeing this handful of characters like willing to just lay their lives down for people they didn't know, and then their friends swoop in and don't let them die alone, and they all stand up. And man, it got me going, my dudes.
Yeah. It's interesting with this medium as well, like where Overwatch and League and are in such a spot where they need to educate people about these games that don't play these games in order to grow their esports scene. Not to bring the conversation completely back here, but an extended animated series around these characters and their abilities and what they're able to do, and figuring out how to work in, like with Overwatch, there's a billion different game modes, right? Like how to pull those into those, like it's an education opportunity for people who don't necessarily play the game but are maybe interested in watching a cool animated series about it, on how your esports work.
The last thing I want to say on the topic of video and why I found it so emotionally compelling before we move on talking about the gameplay itself is I sat and I thought for a long time about why I felt like I was watching trailers.
Like you were watching what? You cut out there.
The Halo 3 Believe trailers. And so, anyone listening, I recognize that I'm an old. And so if you're a young person and you don't know what I'm talking about, just get on the YouTubes. You go to http://www.youtube.com and you search Halo 3 Believe. Like those trailers,
it's in the little search bar right at the top.
They were so well done, and they're worth going back and revisiting. This fantastic, like people talking about the war with the Covenant after the fact, and the sacrifice that Master Chief had made. And I think the reason that hit me so hard and this hit me so hard is in gaming, there's just so much like gritty and dark, and even the heroes are like, they're just these tough guys, and there's not a lot of optimism and like genuine heroism, and to see those things on display, like I don't know, I just I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. We live in a world that's not it's not very optimistic. And when I can get a dose of optimism and people like willing to genuinely stand up and do the right thing, even if it's going to cost them, like I love that. That's the kind of story I want.
Yeah, and it strikes the right. They've always managed to strike the right tone of not being too sappy or saccharine, because I feel like boundless optimism can oftentimes bleed over into that. But they've managed to make it feel earnest, even if it obviously is in the service of earning money, which is no small feat. And they did it again here.
Yeah. So yeah, I've ranted about the trailer and how much I enjoyed it quite enough. So we can move on to the gameplay. Cody watched the gameplay trailer. Did you get to watch that, Luke?
Yeah.
Of course he did.
You're talking about the PvE gameplay trailer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So first off, is PvE even something that you're interested in? Is that something the two of you are going to be playing? If you were to buy this game, is this something that you would be playing?
Nah, dog. It's not why I play Overwatch. Like they've done a lot of PvE events that I just don't care about. Like I think I did one of the like anniversary missions, maybe the very first one. Like it's just it's never something I've clamored for. And all of this talk about let's get a campaign mode in this game, like it's just not been something that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
The PvE modes they've done in the past haven't exactly hit home for me, mostly just because I find that just becomes kind of mindless after a while. It's like a great way to, if I want to take a break in between a PvP match, to go to PvE. But this does interest me just because there are story elements to it, and so I'd be inclined to play through it more for the narrative elements than for the actual PvE elements, because it seems like it even playing with you guys on the Halloween events, it just becomes super easy after a while. If you're playing on normal, obviously you can always jack it up to the next level of difficulty, but I hope they kind of fine-tune PvE if it becomes a more meaningful part of the game in these campaign sections.
Yeah. For me, I used to play so many single player games, so many campaign driven games, and just in the last 5 years or so, I've just gotten to where I just don't spend a lot of time on that type of game. Halo is kind of the exception, but this one really interests me for that same purpose. If they can impact me this deeply with an 8-minute trailer, I want to see what they can do with a campaign's worth of storytelling. I've got high hopes that it can be a really good story, and so it really interests me for that purpose. Because I agree, Cody. Although I have enjoyed the PvE events probably more than the two of you, I've played those quite a bit. They are not the most mechanically satisfying gaming experiences. It's really easy to just find the how do I cheese my way through this rather than really feeling like I've accomplished anything.
I also hope that I hope that the campaign isn't just, I mean, on some level it will be, but I hope it's not just a way to like teach people how to play the competitive. I do hope it can kind of that's kind of my worry. I hope that the mission design is actually somewhat interesting to justify having a campaign mode, as opposed to just like, oh, this is suddenly a payload mission. Oh, this is suddenly a control point mission. Like, I want there to be meaningful mission design in these things. I just don't know I don't know how much they're investing in this. It seems like that's a point of emphasis because people have been demanding it, and so I hope they invest kind of like the creativity they have invested in the competitive, but I don't know.
Well, I saw something earlier about where Kaplan said something along the lines of like, the PvE we're developing for Overwatch 2 is the reason that we haven't innovated a lot with our other events, because we're putting all of that energy and attention onto that. So I'm not worried about it for that reason. I'm also not worried about that concern because there are so many different gameplay elements that are a part of the PvE that are not going to be brought over into the competitive mode, in terms of leveling up your skills, being able to combine, like creating new like synergies between characters, like in the short where like Reinhardt and Brigitte stand together and make a bigger shield, where you combine May's ult with Tracer's ult to create like an explosive ice shard blast. Like, those things aren't going to make their way over to PvP, so I don't think it'll be really like a training mode for it, just because you'd be training people to use things that aren't going to be available for them.
Yeah,
it's less that and more like, here's how you play payload, here's how you play control point.
It kind of like how fighting games do that shit of like, all right, well, here's our cast of characters, and now, all right, down to this 2D view, fight.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about, and I probably shouldn't be, because I think as developers, Blizzard have proven themselves to like invest the resources to make these things meaningful. I just don't have I didn't watch. I watched a little bit of the gameplay, like the full mission gameplay, because they did release a full mission that people could play at BlizzCon. I watched a little bit of it, but I still don't have a concrete idea of like how the scope of the campaign, I guess. And we'll get more of an idea of that movie, but just some concerns.
So with everything that you've seen, what from the gameplay was most exciting? Was there anything besides what you've mentioned already? So let's just kind of wrap this up, I guess. Hit whatever features we haven't hit, and whether those were really exciting or kind of worrisome.
Yeah, the thing I'm most excited about is that a lot of this isn't coming over to the competitive side. And I mean that like, I'm not saying that it's kind of joking that I'm saying that, but I'm legitimately, I think in order for esports to succeed and competitive gaming to succeed, there needs to be a level of consistency with the product. And some of the things that were being talked about in terms of leveling up characters and your abilities get stronger as you're going throughout the game, and you can invest more resources into making this character strong. I was like, this is going to change the landscape of the competitive side of the game that people have thousands of hours in at this point. And there's an entire league built around this. And Overwatch is already going to fuck up whatever transition is going to be required to get to this, because there is a new competitive mode. I think it's called Push. It's like a tug of war mode that's going to be in it. They're going to fuck that up already. So I'm just glad that there's not even more things for them to fuck up in terms of the competitive side of it. But similarly on the competitive side, I'm glad that they're giving all these updates to Overwatch 1 users as well, in order to not split up the community. I think that's an amazing decision. I think it's incredibly important for the scene moving forward, especially because there are people like me who just don't give a shit about the PvE and would feel slighted if it was like, all right, well, you got to come buy Overwatch 2 to get a very, very similar competitive experience. And then also being able to bring over your skins and your other customization items, I think is really cool too.
With that particular point in mind, do you fall into the camp of feeling like calling this a sequel was not the most sensible thing to do. Like, isn't this just an expansion?
What does sequel even mean anymore?
The second iteration of. I'm
this
kidding. I know what you meant.
Like I think the definition of sequel is changing so dramatically in the gaming space. I mean, you think about Fortnite Chapter 2. Like, I think there are people at Epic that consider this to be like the sequel, and I think that in some ways they talk about it as a sequel. It's a new map, the overhauled mechanics, and the adding of the long requested bots into the matches. Like Destiny has done a lot of insane things with their IP in the last couple of years, not just in the massive expansions that they released for it, but hey, we're going to make a whole free-to-play version of this that is pretty much the base game, but there's some differentiation within it. Like, I just think that definition of sequel is so different and just changing, and is it confusing? Maybe. Is it a mistake? I don't necessarily think so.
Yeah,
it's only a mistake in the amount that it got people worried.
Yeah, I think, well, with Overwatch, people also resent it because up until this point, they've been able to play everything for free. Not for free, but they've been able to pay, after paying the $60, they just get everything. So they've kind of been conditioned to think of it that way. I don't really have qualms about calling it a sequel. People have had the same complaint about Destiny 2. I think people's concept, especially with live service games, it just kind of throws everything into whack.
Yeah,
I don't have any concerns about that. I the things I'm excited for are if in the PvE, I like the idea of being able to upgrade your characters and like unlock kind of special little talents. Bringing a little bit more RPG of Blizzard's RPG pedigree into Overwatch is interesting and could yield interesting results in the PvE. Obviously, I wouldn't want to see that transfer into PvP because that presents absolutely bonkers balancing challenges and kind of destroys the competitive edge to it.
I mean, at least they've perfected that already.
Yeah, exactly. Which Jeff Kaplan wisely tipped his hat to during the presentation.
Dude, Kaplan was awesome. He was like, I'm going to be honest, guys. I totally forgot what I came up here to talk about.
Joked about the leaks.
Yeah.
I do like Jeff Kaplan. But as many caveats as I said about the PvE, I think it'd be great to be able to play something non-competitive with people in Overwatch. Just hop on that because I do, like you, Larry. I do miss like the campaign emphasis of online games. And so I think it'd be great to have that in Overwatch. I'm also, I guess this falls under this category, but I'm looking forward to the new character. What's her name? Sojourn. Sojourn.
Yeah.
We didn't really get to see much of her, but I really like the concept of what she appears to be doing, and to have a black woman in Overwatch, it finally is awesome. People have been asking for that for a long time. So I think there's enough to get me excited and feel like it is a sequel, I guess, if we want to put it in those terms.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try to touch on all of the stuff you guys mentioned. But I'm with you, Luke. I'm glad that the competitors are separate. And I am glad that I'm happy to see that stuff in the PvE. But it is right and good not to mix those things together. As far as calling it a sequel goes, like I don't like it, but I don't care enough about it to get angry about it. Like, my thought was, you called the first thing Overwatch Origins Edition, so just call this Overwatch something else, and that just makes more sense to my brain in the way that I think. But at the end of the day, calling it Overwatch 2 isn't
Overwatch Odyssey.
Calling it Overwatch 2 isn't going to keep me from buying it. Blizzard's crappy policies are.
Truth.
I look forward to playing the story, and it's worth noting that they showed several characters that have the next Overwatch character at some point. I'm blanking on the android thing's name.
Is it Ava or something like that?
I think so. So you have her, you have the bad guy Zenyatta.
Oh yeah.
And he's rumored to be like a summoner type character. So I'm kind of hoping that when this thing drops, we're gonna get like a few characters thrown into the mix. But I'm doubtful about that because of how difficult it is to balance things when they just drop one character at a time.
I was really surprised how front and center that robot character, the flying one, was to the marketing. Like, she was a prominent part of the story trailer. Obviously, she was in McCree's little short, but it got to the point where I'm like, did they release her as a character and I just haven't played the game in that long? Because she was such a prominent part. So obviously she's going to be a big part of the franchise moving forward.
Yeah. There are two things that concern me. One is
It's Echo.
the new game. Yeah, it is Echo. You're right.
I was like, I
Echo.
know it's not. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's not Ava, but there's a league character named Echo too, so I wasn't sure.
There's a Siege character named Echo as well.
There's an Echo the Dolphin character named Echo also.
Yo, that game is about aliens abducting your family, and I just thought it was about. I thought it was a fucking swimming simulator when I was a kid.
Thought I was just eating some fish until I got bored and went into the orthodontist.
Wait, did your orthodontist have a Sega Genesis too?
Yes.
Dude, mine did too. You'd go there and he'd be like, all right, before I torture your mouth, you can play Street Fighter.
Well, as you can tell, I didn't actually get to go into the orthodontist. My sister did. We could only afford one pair of braces, and she needed them.
We flipped a coin.
What was I talking about? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I derailed you.
The new game mode push. That's a competitive game mode, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
It'll be in the
teams
Overwatch
take
League.
turns controlling.
Team Fortress 2 had that.
Yeah. It didn't excite me. It just felt too similar to the game modes that already exist. Like, it's basically another version of pushing the payload. Just instead of taking turns doing it, you're kind of tug of war in the thing. I don't know. I would have liked to.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I would have liked to see something different, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how that works competitively, because it seems like a who can win like 5 fights in a row kind of thing in order to win. And that kind of snowballing isn't happening a ton in the professional side of things. I don't know. I've seen more in action.
So that was one thing that concerned me, and then the other thing that how much of the PvE stuff seemed to be occurring in map space that we've already seen. That is the one thing that gives me doubts about the quality of the PvE product we're going to see. But
they might want to hold stuff off until later.
Yeah, that was my thought. I hope that's the case, and it's not just a Halo Reach Spartan Ops. As much as I loved Spartan Ops, they recycled the same 3 or 4 maps for 12 to 15 missions. So yeah, all in all, like, killer announcement. Great way to make the announcement. If I compartmentalize and I don't think about the uncle Thanksgiving dinner, like, I appreciate this thing for what it is. I appreciate the product that they're producing with Overwatch. And again, the quality of those shorts just wonderful. You guys have any closing thoughts on this?
No, not really.
All right.
I was just very pleased.
And such a focus on May, good choice, because May is Bay.
That's true. Very true. All right. Let's end this show out with our weird news of the week. Cody,
Yes.
what are you bringing to us to befuddle the mind?
Bringing some hot Apex Legends
Never heard of it.
weirdness. Apparently there was a patch that occurred recently that turned I want to say battle bus, but it's the dropship, that turned the dropship into Fight Club. And I wonder, because the title of the article that I'm citing is great. The headline for this US Gamer article by Matthew Olson is Apex Legends dropship has become a fight club with the lights turned off. And that is essentially what's happened. Apparently, people are able to, in the character select screen and in the dropship, down each other. And that results in all sorts of weirdness when you then try to drop into the map. Apparently, if you stay with your squad, you'll just be downed, but like you'll be in the downed animation, but just drop to the map with them. If you drop solo, you plummet straight down. So this is obviously something that Respawn will probably tend to very quickly, but in the meantime, it's resulting in some hilarity, because you can just like, you can't really see what your character's doing, but you can definitely just punch people out blindly in the dropship, which is pretty entertaining.
Can't wait to get some wins tonight.
Exactly.
I love how it says, I think I found a bug. Siggy Tao's tweet here. Yeah.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, just kind of, I mean, it's a hilarious glitch that will definitely need to be patched out, but in the meantime, it's pretty entertaining.
All right. Let's get out of here, guys. Who are you? Where can people find you? What are you going to be tweeting about this week? Larry, let's start with you.
I'm Larry. You can find me on Twitter at LayerHunts. No, you can't. Sorry. You can find me on Twitter at StillInFlux. And I'm still tweeting a lot of political stuff, so avoid me if you need to. But I've also begun to tweet out game clips from Apex Legends because I think I've got some clips worth watching, including one where my squad and the enemy squad wipe each other out, and it's a beautiful commentary on the meaninglessness of everything.
All right, awesome. Cod Donald over there.
Cod Donald, that's a new one. I'm Cody. You can find me on Twitter at ProElectioneer. You can bet your ass I'm going to be tweeting about Death Stranding after this weekend. That's mostly what I'm going to be doing. I got a busy weekend, so I won't be tweeting too much later part of this week, but next week I'm going to be tweeting some thoughts for sure.
All right, my name is Luke. You can find me on Twitter at LukePVA, and this weekend I'm probably just going to be tweeting a bunch of pictures of the blank expression I'll have when I finish the 2-hour cutscene in Death Stranding and still don't know what the hell is going on. It'll look a lot like this.
It's a versatile expression, though.
Yeah. My face is going to get stuck like that. Speaking of face, real quick, I know this episode's been like 2 hours long. I ordered some glasses through Warby Parker, not a sponsor, because they're like $300 cheaper than getting them through my eye doctor. So we'll see what that spells for the quality. But in order to get my pupil measurements, I had to send them a picture where I took a card with a magnetic strip and hold it under my nose like this. So that so I sent a picture and felt like a dumbass doing it. And they sent me back an email like, hey, we aren't able to get it off of that image. So I had to do it again, making me feel like a dumbass. My wife takes the picture for me and she starts laughing at me. Right? And I always wear my glasses, right? So she starts laughing at me. And I was like, what's up? She's like, for a second there, it just looked like you were looking at me, but your other eye was going somewhere else. And she's like dying laughing about this. And I was like, honey, we have been married for 5 years and you have never noticed that I have a lazy eye. Like, I'm legally blind in my left eye. It's lazy. And here she is just fucking cackling about my lazy eye, which I've got like real narrow eyelids anyway. And like, you know, wear glasses all the time. So nobody really ever sees it. But yeah, she just thought it was the funniest fucking thing. And I was so hurt by it. Thanks, Warby Park. Not a sponsor.
I forget and invite Luke to 3D movies sometimes.
Yeah, they don't work. It don't work. All right, guys. Well, let's get out of here. This has been PvA Radio. You guys know the deal. I'm not going to keep you any longer than we have to. Just have one thing to say. Just one thing.
One thing to say.
All right, guys. Let's get out of here. PvA Radio. You know where to find us. Leave a review, comment, all of that sort of stuff. And until next week, we love you. Goodbye.
Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity.
Would you kindly pick up that shortwave radio?